At 5:50 a.m., a chilling discovery was made on the Philippine island of Mindanao. Locals stumbled upon the gruesome remains of a young woman lying by the side of a narrow path. Her hands were tightly bound. She was topless, but still wearing jeans. And the most horrific part, the woman had been decapitated. Panic spread through the community as the villagers quickly alerted the authorities. By the time the police arrived, the scene had already been swarmed by shocked onlookers surrounding the horrific remains. Fresh blood stained the ground, telling the authorities that this crime had not long took place. But there were more questions than answers. Who was this woman? And more disturbingly, who had committed such a brutal act? Without a clear identity for the victim or a trace of the assailant, the police initiated an urgent manhunt. The island of Mindanao, once calm, was now gripped by fear as a brutal killer was amongst them. This case is extreme, but it's not really well known, so I feel it's a good one to tell you, but it's only short, and there isn't a great deal of images that I can show you unfiltered, but I have done my best to portray the case to you visually. And a little warning, this is a rough one. As ever, if you find this video fascinating, then please drop it a like, and if you're new, then please subscribe and help me reach 250,000 subscribers. Thank you for watching. This video is created solely for educational and documentary purposes. It does not endorse or condone the criminal actions described within. In the early hours of December 5th, just after 5 a.m, a young woman found herself disorientated, wandering in search of her friend. The unfamiliar surroundings of rural Mindanao only deepened her confusion. She asked for directions, followed them, but somehow always ended up more lost. Exhausted and overwhelmed, she finally took a seat, hoping to gather her thoughts. And then a young man stumbled towards her. His breath reeked of alcohol, and though he appeared drunk, he seemed intent on helping. He spoke in the local Philippine dialect, but the woman, not speaking this language, only responded in English. The language barrier quickly led to frustration on both sides. Gestures and hand signals were exchanged, but their efforts to communicate ended up in silence. Feeling deflated, the woman gave up trying to understand him and rose to her feet. Without looking back, she started walking up the narrow path towards the cemetery. Irritated by her speaking English, the young man felt insulted, as if she were mocking him for his lack of knowledge. His frustration turned into rage, and he began to stalk her. His eyes locked on her back as she walked forward, unaware, looking for her friend. Then, as he got close, he made his move. With sudden, brutal force, he struck her head from behind with an iron pipe. She quickly crumbled to the ground, but the man kept on hitting her with the pipe. Dazed and bleeding, her hands raised defensively as she looked up. She began pleading for her life, but her words, still in English, only stoked his anger further. Ignoring her cries, he roughly bound her hands behind her back. The young man then drew a sangot, a sharp blade that is used a lot in the Philippines, and began the brutal act of decapitating the woman. I can only hope that she lost consciousness quickly, sparing her from the full horror of what happened. After ending her life, he tore off her top and placed her severed head inside, cradling it as he made his way home. Blood dripped steadily, leaving a grim trail back to his home. Once inside, he claimed to be starving, so he cracked open her skull, pulling out her brains and carefully scooping out the rest of the brain matter. He removed the flesh, the eyes, nose, and ears from the skull. He prepared a bowl of rice, placing the brain on top as though it was just another meal. Most of the facial parts he cooked, others he just devoured raw. When he was finished, he discarded the stripped skull into a ditch near his home. The police, upon discovering the mutilated body, launched a manhunt. Locals told them that they had seen a young man who had been speaking with the woman not long before and told them where he lived. They quickly made their way there, but a fresh trail of blood also led them to his doorstep. But by the time they arrived, he had already fled, alerted by reports that the body had been found. Inside his home, officers found a sickening scene: a bowl with traces of brain matter mixed with rice, and blood splattered across the floor. It was a truly disturbing crime scene. The young man was apprehended shortly afterwards in a nearby village. When arrested, he showed no surprise. He seemed to know that this moment was inevitable. The authorities took him back to his property, where he calmly explained the gruesome murder in chilling detail, describing how he had eaten her brain and parts of her face. The police recovered the woman's skull from the nearby ditch. The man was identified as 21-year-old Lloyd Bagtong. He was long-time unemployed, with a history of mental health issues. When asked why he killed her, he answered coldly, because she had spoken English. When questioned further about why he ate her remains, he simply replied, "I was hungry." His responses shocked the media and the people across the Philippines. But to the officers, it was clear that this was not the reasoning of a sane man. The next evening, at around 7:40 p.m, Lloyd was scheduled to be transferred from prison to a psychiatric facility for an evaluation to determine if he was fit to stand trial. On the way, however, the police van suffered a punctured tyre. As the officers stopped to change it, Lloyd requested to step out so he could urinate. He was granted permission, but as soon as he exited the vehicle, he seized his opportunity. Snatching a pistol from one of the officers, he managed to fire one shot before 3 rounds were fired in return, killing him almost instantly. Lloyd was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. For the local community, there was a measure of relief. A sense of justice, however brutal, had been served, and that the streets were now safe from this horror. Yet, what remains truly tragic about this case is the identity of the victim. Despite appeals for family or friends to come forward and a DNA test being conducted, as far as I can tell, the woman has never been identified. Was she a traveller passing through unfamiliar territory? This would explain why she only spoke English. Who was her friend? She seemed lost, stranded in a place far from home, only to meet a horrifically cruel fate. And now she may be lost forever, with no name, no history, and no one to mourn her. I can only hope that her friends and family, wherever they may be, find peace, and that someday someone will recognize her so she can finally reclaim her identity. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay sane.